let's go ahead and get started. So today's cooking class is about tapas, and tapas have a literal meaning, top, right? But it started out as something that a bartender would put on top of a drink to get people drinking and keep people drinking. So what are some flavors and what are some things that make you want to keep drinking? Salt. Anything else? Spice, acid, all those things. Pretty much everything but sweet. So I think probably what they used to do was something more like a bit of pate on a crostini or something like that. But I thought we would go a little bit more modern. Any vegetarians here?
Yeah.
It's part of the pork a mile away, huh? So this is a pork terrine, Castelvetrano olive, and beefwater pepper. So this is similar to something that you might see in San Sebastian, but definitely flavors that are evocative of Spain. And one thing that I noticed from having been there was that the French seem to eat a lot of fruit with their preserved meats, but the Spanish seem to eat more salt, vegetable pickles, and things like that. And so that's how we went this direction. I'm not quite sure what that is, but I mean why that reason is. But I mean, in Normandy they make cider with their apples, but in the Basque region they definitely make cider with their apples. It's apple country, it's grape country in terms of lighter white grapes. So it's kind of between apple cider or Secalina, like that bracing white wine. Having to decide on what we would drink today, cider. But they turn all those apples that instead of making apple butter, they turn them into cider, which I think is a great solution to a surplus of apples. So that's the first thing we'll taste today. The papara peppers. It's an ingredient that we use frequently here in the kitchen. As we'll see, as through most of the tapas that we taste today, the Spanish are famous for their pickling, canning, preserving, and those techniques as well. And the papara peppers are, to me, the Spanish version of pepperoncini. Just a little crisper, a little easier to eat, less eaty. It's a great little condiment. We have a pizza on the menu right now. It has pepperoni and it has papara peppers as well. So just enough spice to kind of make your mouth water. Certainly nothing over that. Yes. We have a specialty company that we get them from, but I've gotten them before at there used to be a Spain specialty shop at in Mill Valley, behind the Safeway in Mill Valley. There was a good baseball there, but I think Sunshine. I think I've got them at Sunshine. But that's what I thought we'd start out with. P-I-P-A-R-R-A. And they're great just to put out with drinks and nuts. Hello. Can I pour you a glass of hard cider? Okay. Nice one. And now the second one that we're going to taste is kind of Spanish tortilla, and to me it's kind of the poor man's quiche. And so eggs are pretty cheap, but potatoes are even cheaper. If you don't have to make a crust to make a quiche, or you don't have time to make a crust to make a quiche, why would you? So I made this morning, and this is kind of one that you see everywhere, and it's always there. They make it in the morning. There's nothing fancy about it. Thank goodness I cut it in 12 pieces. There's nothing fancy about it, but it's like I said, it's peasant food. It's a great lunch. It doesn't have to be hot. It's okay if it's cold. It's okay if it's ambient temperature. It can last all day. It's filling. It's flavorful, nutritious, and it'll stick to your ribs, as my grandmother would say. Now, for this one, I don't have a recipe. It's just I'm gonna show you how to make it in just a moment, but it's just more of a ratio. I also call it poor man's quiche because it doesn't have any dairy product in it. It's just eggs. Normally between the protein molecules and actually shorten them so that the proteins aren't as strong, so that it's a little more of a tender custard. But in this case, thank you. But in this case, you have to have enough egg to hold all those potatoes together. I think it would fall apart if I used a standard custard ratio. So I cooked the potatoes ahead of time. So I did it kind of a much more modern way. So I'll start with the traditional way. The traditional way is extremely difficult to do, especially on your first try, especially without making a mess, especially and make it look pretty. So traditionally, you would take hot olive oil or hot pork fat, saute your onions until they were tender, add your sliced potatoes, season the potatoes, try and cook the potatoes until they were evenly tender, then add the eggs. Then when the eggs were half cooked, when the eggs were half cooked, you would invert the tortilla onto a plate, flip the pan back over, slide it back out of the pan off the plate into the pan, and finish cooking it on the other side, which invariably makes a huge mess on the stove top. Yeah. It's extreme. Anybody ever done that with success? Yeah. It's really tough. I've seen a lot of people fail on that one. So I included. Right. So this is the way that I'm doing it now. This is the way I did it today. I put a little. So these eggs have been beaten and then passed through the colander just to make sure there's no bits of egg in there and to get out the chalazai, the bit of egg that clings to the yolk. But it's just whole eggs. And then so these potatoes, I don't recommend using russet potatoes for this because they're very, very crumbly. So these are Corolla potatoes. Yukon Gold potatoes work really well. Even red beet potatoes would work fine. You can do them skin on or skin off. Just depends on your preference. I think it makes a prettier tortilla to do it skin off. So I peeled these and then just cooked them very, very gently in fairly well salted water. It's easy to make this too bland. Hopefully you think it's seasoned correctly. I think it's seasoned pretty well. But it's something that it usually stands on its own. There's not usually an olive tapenade or ketchup or anything that's served with it. It's usually just kind of standing on its own. But what helps it, I think, we caramelized some onions separately and then added those, so that adds a sweetness and kind of a savory base note that otherwise wouldn't really be there. And so you can see pockets of them, they're just kind of layered in here, not too evenly.
Those onions also. It looks like you gave them more.
No, that's just the onions need to be seasoned well enough that the water's going to sweat out of them. So we start them in vegetable oil, but then we season them right away with salt and pepper, so that the water comes right out. And then it just takes some patience, and it takes a little bit of actually letting them stick to the pan and get some color. And it can be kind of a high maintenance thing. But these we do these. The finished product was 2 quarts of this, which probably started out as 10 pounds of onions. So it's not a high yield or fast procedure by any means. But anyway, then I just stacked it all the way. I just layered it all the way up to almost to the rim of the pan. I cooked it at 300 degrees. So cooking things slowly. Excuse me 1 second. John, can you start the mushrooms, please? Cooking things really, really slowly. The potatoes, the frittata, allows for a much larger window of perfect doneness. So it seems obvious. I think it's obvious. Sometimes I get blue in the face trying to explain it to a cook, and it's obviously not obvious to them. But cooking thin potatoes like this at a very simmer allows for cooking them properly, and then cooking the frittata, even though it's over an inch thick at 300 degrees, allows for getting it out before it starts to souffle, because by that time the eggs they start to smell sulfury, they're overcooked, and then they also collapse after they souffle because they can't maintain that hubbiness.
So you just have the plastic on it because you didn't want to.
I cooked it with the plastic underneath. I left it open on the top.
Cook it with the plastic.
Huh? Yep. Just like Parmesan, just like Hannah potatoes.
So this plastic isn't burning.
No, not at 300 degree oven. It just stayed just like that the whole time.
I get it.
I took it out, let it sit for 15 minutes, and then I did invert it onto that wood plate. It just came right out. Easy as pie. What's that? Yeah.
Is it a special kind of plastic or just any kind of
Nope.
saran wrap?
Just regular saran wrap. Yeah, so this is Crisanto, so he's going to cook a few things for
I like
us
Crisanto.
through the magic of television. So these are just cremini mushrooms, which is a fancy name for brown brown bud mushrooms. But anyway, I didn't wash them. I just brushed them off with a wet towel to get the dirt off. He's going to sear these off for us. So this one, this tapas that we're going to taste next is very, very simple, but to me it's one of those dishes that, okay, so for the tortilla, for instance, you could put you could put boquerones on top, you could put lots of different relishes on top and spice it up and make it more interesting. You put a green salad next to it, it's a bistro lunch. You put some ham inside, it's more interesting and nourishing. But the one that we're going to taste next is one of those preparations for me that you can't improve by adding things to it. It's just very simply those mushrooms seared off a la plancha, which is, a la plancha is a very thick iron griddle, and then just bathed in garlic butter. And so this is a very evocative to me of a town in Spain called Logroño, which is where my wife and I were told, you have to go there, you have to eat the tapas in Logroño, you have to eat the tapas in Logroño. We got to Logroño, we went out for dinner at 9:30, we were the only ones out. We sat down at 9:45, we were the only ones in the restaurant, and we thought we were in the wrong town. And then went back to our hotel, and at 11 o'clock, the street just, boom, just exploded, and all these smells started coming up into our hotel room windows. So, the most pervasive one was just this incredible garlic smell. So we went down, it's just this amazing little cobblestone alley that's just lined almost exclusively with tapas restaurants, and each of them only does one thing. And the one that had the longest line was the one with mushrooms and the garlic butter. So that's what we're going to attempt to recreate for you. I don't have the same butter, have very similar mushrooms, but that's the one that's it's only useful for us right now. Any questions so far?
Brandon, what was the name of the town?
What was the name of the town?
The town that Tapas was.
Logroño. Logro. So while he's cooking, I do want to say a couple of things about, because a lot of times I'll hear, oh, we went out and we ate tapas style, which, you know, whoever, the person who's saying that means, well, we shared a bunch of stuff. And so when I went to Spain, that's what I thought I was going to be doing, and that wasn't quite the case. So the tapas restaurants over there, the traditional ones that I went to, I would be the bartender, you'd be the guest, and you wouldn't see a menu, but behind me, there's basically a buffet of all these different tapas, and you just say, I want that one, two of those, one of those, and I'm making your plate for you, and then at the end of the tapas cafeteria line, I hand it to you, and away you go. So that still is the traditional setup for tapas. There's a restaurant in San Sebastian called La Cuchara de San Telmo, I believe. A couple of guys have started this, and they come from a 2-star Michelin restaurant. It's not Echeverry. It might be Echeverry. Maybe I think Echeverry's an Indian chef. I can't remember. But anyway, they started doing much more composed tapas plates. So instead of just the tortilla, it might be some sort of hot take on the tortilla with a couple of different sauces. Instead of the mushroom with garlic butter, it might be 3 different types of mushrooms, and there's a special sauce, and it's got, you know, pine needle dust on it or something like that. But anyway, they're doing some very cool stuff, and that's kind of the way that tapas are being caught up in the eddy of all of the insane forward progress of Spanish cuisine. So some interesting things like that are happening over there. It gets interpreted over here in different, strange, and exciting ways. And so the last thing we'll do is a couple more composed tapas. So, can we go check on the mushrooms?